Hello, this is Jeremy Murphy, and today's blab is called Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry. Worries tend to surface and overpower us at times, and we need to have the tools, the skills, and the spiritual strength, if you will, from some source in order to really be able to handle life's challenges, difficulties, and obstacles, roadblocks. We just have so many moments in life where we're knocked to the ground, and we have to find the strength from somewhere to get back up, to rise up with determination, with perseverance, and to be able to go on. So I wanted to tell you about a Catholic saint that has helped me through this. And he had a famous saying, and it's been shortened to pray, hope, and don't worry. Let me hold this up. It has a quote on it. Now, who was Padre Pio? Padre Pio is a Catholic saint who was, well, let me go to the biographical information here. It's one of the reasons I was a little bit late starting this. I had to grab my book that had the bio so I could kind of give you some background on who Padre Pio was, Saint Pio. He was born in 1887 in Pietrelcina, Italy, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do have some Italian descent. I should look into that. But he was baptized the same year, became a Capuchin friar in 1903, was ordained a priest in 1910, celebrated his first Mass in 1910, and then some very interesting things happened after that. There are some Catholic saints who have stigmata, who had the marks of Christ on their hands or their feet. St. Francis is one example. Padre Pio is another. There are many others. I don't have a complete list of those. But that's about when the bio says that the invisible stigmata was first experienced in 1910, and then the stigmata became visible in 1918. And at that point, the Catholic Church began an investigation because these things don't just randomly happen. And when they do happen, they want to make sure that if someone has stigmata, that it's fully investigated. So there is a book called Padre Pio Under Investigation, The Secret Vatican Files, and this is written by Francesco Castelli. And I have read this book. It's an excellent book. I'd highly recommend it. That's what the book looks like. And there's Padre Pio's picture. Interestingly, let's see, Padre Pio died. I was born in 1968 in July. And Padre Pio died a couple months after that in September of 1968. So, we barely were alive for very long in this earth together. But sometimes you feel this soul connection with someone that you can't fully understand. And for me, I'm attracted to mysticism and the mystic saints, the mysteries that are harder to explain or fully understand. And it requires more intellectual work to kind of look at what happened in the saint's life and to understand it. Mother Teresa was that type of mystic. Saint Therese of Lisieux is another one. Saint John of the Cross. Just, some of these people, some of these saints went through extraordinary hardship and just vast darkness, perhaps darker than any of us have ever experienced and can even imagine. And I firmly believe that none of us are handed more than we can handle. And so if you are overcome with worry, the prayer of Padre Pio is very powerful. The pray, hope, and don't worry. So that's what it's been shortened to. There is an additional statement by Padre Pio that is frequently left out of this prayer, quote, the reason why we shouldn't worry, because worry is useless. Now, if you think about that, for me, worry has been meaningful at times, and I thought it was useful. And so when I encountered this concept of worry is useless, it was really challenging to me because I couldn't really, at first I disagreed with it. I couldn't fathom it. It took a little bit of work to be able to unravel what that meant and to be able to really try to keep worry out of my life or a day, and to be able to notice when worry accumulates to a certain point that it has to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with. And for me, that means prayer, meditation. As a runner, I try to run some of those worries off. And I know, sometimes we learn worries from our families, from our friends. I think maybe I picked up some of it from my mother. Hold on a second. I'm going to pause this for a moment. Okay, we're back. What I'd like to emphasize is that Padre Pio bore these wounds of the stigmata for 50 years. And a lot of times these stigmata, they bled, they were examined, there was some pain. It was, it made Padre Pio uncomfortable and insecure. He wrapped his hands so that he could celebrate Mass and still be able to really be able to perform his duties and still maintain some sense of dignity. And so that's that's an example of bearing an incredible amount of suffering beyond what I think a lot of us have ever encountered, and maybe will ever encounter, maybe more than any of us could handle. So that's something to keep in mind as far as someone who really was faced with an incredible challenge, and yet, given all this, he was inspired to spend long hours at the confessional, so that when people wanted to confess their sins, they could go to him. And he was very generous with his time, maybe more generous than any other priest of his time. And people were just amazed at his patience. How could he do this? How could he maintain this ability to help all these people unburden their sins, sufferings? People confided in him, and he helped them directly, sometimes through personal correspondence or negotiating difficult situations. But it just seems like he was handed all these impossible situations and given a huge amount of suffering, and yet he handled it so well. And he didn't complain about it. Maybe he grumbled about it a little, but pretty quietly. Maybe in private letters and not so much in public discourse or discussions. So, Saint Pio serves as a great example for all of us as far as the importance of prayer, hope, and not letting worry overpower us or overcome us. I think a lot of times we get caught up with what are our physical abilities, what are our intellectual abilities, but we don't think about what are our supernatural spiritual abilities. And are we really tapping those? Are we looking for the spiritual supernatural strength that we need and praying to God for that? Praying for the intercession of the saints and angels to help us when we need it. There are times where without that type of inspiration, we just feel like we're at a complete impasse. We hit a brick wall. We can't overcome the challenges that we face. We're just overcome with misery or sorrow. And there's no reason to really allow those sorrow, the challenges overcome us or overpower us. Because when we look at people who had much more suffering than we did, bigger challenges, handed bigger, just impossible situations that I can't imagine trying to unravel myself. But we all have that ability to tap that supernatural strength. If we look for that inner sense of spirituality that is there, and I think that's something we need to all try to cultivate in our own way. And that may mean different things to different people. And I respect that there are different religions and religious beliefs. But this is where I seek my spiritual strength from Catholicism, from mysticism, from really people like St. Pio that inspire me to really look at trying to carry my cross and to try to carry it without complaining. That's extremely difficult. We're all more inclined to throw a pity party and to complain and grumble and kind of take the woe is me attitude that I think a lot of people in the Bible did at different points. Moses, for example, grumbled a lot in the desert, and so did the Israelites. And, that might explain why they wandered in the desert for 40 years. Some of the prophets grumbled a little bit with God as far as what is my mission? Why am I here? Why are you giving me such an impossible, desolate situation? And why are you helping me when I really need your help? I can't do this alone. And I think the more we try to do something alone, the more we realize that we need to rely on some divine source of spiritual power, of supernatural spirituality, and to try to tap that on a daily basis. And for me, that means daily silence, daily prayer, meditation whenever I can squeeze it in. Some talk about you have to have 15 minutes to meditate. And I don't think that's true. I think a friend of mine helped me realize that you can meditate in 1 minute and you can combine it with prayer. And I think if you combine it with prayer, some of which might be silent, some of it might not, some of it might be more in the form of petitions. But I think that's a powerful way that we can really try to find what is our spiritual strength, where does our strength come from, and to try to plug in that power source on a regular basis. Because what happens if we don't, we just walk around feeling drained, empty, mindless. We feel like we're wandering. We lack direction. And so that's something that I try to plug into that power source, to ask God for help every day, and to ask him to illuminate my life in ways that maybe he hasn't, and really allowing me to be open to who needs my help and to show me how I can help them. And sometimes that's a tough situation. So, okay. Hi, Deborah. We have a question. Meditation is a part of listening to God's word, whether audible or an impression. How do you suggest clearing the mind's clutter if a person has a hectic schedule? It's a good question. Let's see. I'm going to put your question up here so it's easier to see. It's a little larger type up here. But what I try to do is to try to look at what clutter is there and to try to empty it in some meaningful way. And so that might mean writing it down. That might mean sharing it with someone that I trust, whether it's a family member, a close friend, confidant. But I think we have to be conscious of how much that clutter is accumulated and how much it's clogging up our brains, our bodies, and it affects our functionality. If we're not effectively clearing or sweeping those things out on a regular basis, it just does really affect our ability to do that. So, sometimes for me, I'm not an expert on meditation. I think I know a lot more about prayer than meditation. But some guided meditations have been very helpful to me because they've helped me learn how to meditate. And I know in the Bible, there's, the apostles asked Jesus, Lord, teach us to pray. And I think that's something that it takes practice. It takes silence. For example, on Sundays, I try to create silence for at least an hour. And actually, I try to do this every day, but it's tough to keep. It's tough to keep that silence during the week if you have to work for a full hour, because what happens is you get interrupted by. For me, my dog, my daughter, someone will call, something like that. And if you're working from home, you have to be available. But what I try to do is I tell myself I'm going to charge my phone for an hour a day. And so I put the phone in airplane mode. Sometimes I'll put it on do not disturb, and I'll try to create that quiet space as best I can. And so sometimes that means going to a private room, closing the door, understanding that I could be interrupted by my wife, my daughter, my dog, anyone ringing the doorbell, but trying to respect that sometimes I'm going to need to break that silence for something important. And sometimes it's maybe not going to be as an important thing that I'm interrupted by. And so I might ask someone to wait a little bit. I'll say, can you give me a couple minutes? Can you give me 5 minutes? That's what I try to do as far as clearing the clutter. I don't know if it's possible to clear it entirely, but I think it is possible to clear it when it accumulates too much. And if it just feels like it's a pile or hopefully not a mountain, but sometimes clutter does accumulate if we're not dealing with it systematically. Just trying to say, look, I need to take an hour, get rid of all this stuff. Maybe if I write about it and pray about it at the same time or in conjunction with each other, I'll be able to dispose of it a little better. And quite honestly, sometimes I think it's just a matter of leaving it in God's hands. There's a saying, let go and let God. And I think if we do that in a meaningful way, we understand that we can't do everything alone, and we can't do very much without God's help, as far as I'm concerned. Without that, I just feel helpless and powerless personally, and that's just me. I understand not everybody's going to maybe agree on that, but that's where I am. I have, without that divine power source, I don't know if I really know what I'm doing. I don't know if I would be going the right way or not, or pursuing selfish motives when I should be pursuing selfless, go-giver type of motives. So that's what I would say, and I hope that's a good answer. It's a difficult question. I think it's something that we deal with on a frequent basis in a modern age, and I've even tried to do silent Periscope broadcasts. I try to do them on Sundays. And I got the idea from someone that was doing silent Saturdays on Meerkat, trying to do silent broadcasts where you're maybe leading meditation through visual or auditory cues that aren't coming from you. They might be coming from nature. So, the birds chirping in conjunction with the sun shining off the trees might kind of send a message as to how someone could interpret what's going on in their life. And everyone's in a different place. And if you step outside, we're all going to see something different. Even if we're in the same place, we're going to have 350 different interpretations of what it looks outside on a sunny day. And we're going to see different things. For example, today when I was running, I saw the ice was melting, but I was focused on the ice crystals because the sun was reflecting off the ice in just such a way the crystals kind of, it just kind of had a little bit of a solar glow. And maybe that's not going to happen every day, but that's what I saw. And I'm sure tomorrow, when it's less sunny, I might just kind of see that it's dark and gloomy and not really see the same thing. So, that's a good question. The silent scope idea, some people don't seem to fully understand it. Some people want to talk and want engagement. But I think a lot of us, we're looking for silence. And we're hungry for it. We're starving for it because we're just bombarded with noise. And not only noise that we create, words that we speak, but our televisions are blaring constantly. And I love music, and so I'm frequently listening to music or creating music on the piano. I play the piano, I sing, but I need that silence too. And if I get detached from that, then it just seems like I get detached from who I really am. And I think if we don't take the time to reflect on who we are, what we're doing, and why we're doing it, then we're just wandering. But if we take the time to be silent, to reflect on where we are, and to be able to really try to make that a powerful part of our daily or weekly routine, I think that's very helpful. Maybe it won't work during the week to have a full hour of silence, but maybe we could do 15 minutes. Maybe we could do 5 minutes. There's a saying from, I think it was St. Francis of Assisi, but I'd have to check the quote. But I think he said something like, it may have been St. Francis de Sales. It's one of the St. Francis saints, I believe. But I think one of them said, if you are trying to figure out how much to pray, if you're not busy and half an hour a day is enough, and if you are busy, you need a full hour. And I think there's some truth to that, because if we have a lot going on, and I think we all do, we really have to find enough space in our prayer life to create an internal source of strength that really can be something that we build from, and not just something we cling to when we're in trouble. And that's the human tendency. You know, we like to just pray when we need something, or we're in trouble, or we feel like we're overwhelmed with chaos and destruction. And, you know, you can get into chaos theory and all this, and that's fascinating for physics debates. But it's not very helpful as far as spirituality is concerned, because it gets us focused on the negative. And for me, I try to focus more on the positive. And so if I'm focused on darkness, I'll look at things that illuminate that. I'll look up at the sky and look at focus on the sun, the stars, any kind of astronomical object that is a source of light, a comet, a nebula, you know, anything that helps me reflect on the beauty of life that exists. And then that gets me focused on the source of that light. And that makes me grateful for having that light in my life. And I think if we make a daily practice of gratitude, we can really try to be more prayerful people, more hopeful people, and people that don't worry all the time. You know, no one likes a worry wart. I don't think any of us want to be that. But we need to find ways to really be able to keep worry at bay, to keep it at arm's length, to not really allow it to be at the table with us. And I think there's a difference between being concerned about something and being worried about it. I think we can have concerns, and that might be helpful and constructive, but if they reach the point of worry, where we're losing sleep over things, unless they're catastrophic events or something of that nature, that's just not justified. We're giving the worries too much power, too much energy. So let's let go of our worries. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I'm going to keep this short. So, but what I would say in summary, to quote Padre Pio, St. Pio, pray, hope, and don't worry, because worry is useless. Thank you. Bye.